How do you start a consulting business while working full-time? Well, it's an interesting question because for most people, quitting your job isn't an option. You need to build your consulting business while continuing to earn a paycheck. But what's the smartest way to do that? Should you get clients before you quit your job, and how many clients? Should you tell your employer? Can you consult in the same industry as the company that you work for? Should you charge from day one or work for free to gain experience? And how much time does this realistically take each week? And when will you know when it's actually safe to leave your full-time job? In this episode, I'm going to answer all those questions and help you avoid some of the biggest mistakes people make when trying to build a consulting business on the side. Let's dive right in. Okay, so let's dive in and we're going to answer a lot of questions here. The first one, should I quit my job first or get clients first? Well, that really depends on a lot of things. Do you have money set aside in a bank account? Like, how would you pay for your livelihood in the meantime, right? Because you've got this job that's your security, that's consistent, a paycheck coming in month after month, but you're dedicating a lot of time to it. So I understand the question, if you quit that, could you make ends meet? Now, going back many years ago, I had sold enough services by advertising on classifieds that I felt confident that I could make enough money to cover my bills. So I did. I quit my job and I took that risk, but that was a risk that I was willing to take, right? You need to know what your risk tolerance is, and risk doesn't mean doing crazy things or putting yourself at risk. It just means this could either go well or it could not. Like, what's the worst outcome if I fail? And are you okay with that as an option? So with the next question, how long should I keep my full-time job? That's also up to you. I would suggest setting a goal. When do you want to quit your job? And what outcomes do you need to get in your consulting business that would give yourself that green light? Like, set a goal, work towards it, track your progress towards it. And when you achieve it, then you can quit your job. Now, to the question that I found, when will I know that it's safe to leave? I don't know. Again, it just depends on your risk tolerance. I quit my job before it was safe to do so. Like, what is at risk here? Is your life at risk? Like, if that's the case, maybe you're in the wrong industry. But going back to the previous recommendation, really specify what goals you should do and be realistic. Like, if you're working 40 hours a week in this job, how many hours do you need to work per week in addition to that to be able to achieve those goals? And knowing yourself, if you actually quit that job, what would you do with that additional 40 hours per week? Do you have the discipline to really make that work and to make it successful? Okay, this next question is a pretty good one. Can I realistically build a consulting business on nights and weekends? And I think so. That depends on the industry. I think some clients will find it weird that they're not getting consulting during business hours. So, just think about that. You can play around with time zones, because if you're on the East Coast, 5 p.m. for you on the East Coast is going to be 2 p.m. in California. So you might start with consulting clients in an earlier time zone. Or you can just be upfront with people and say, this is my day job and I'm doing consulting at nights and weekends, and just be upfront with that. And there'll be some people that will not want that, but there'll be other people that will say, yeah, that makes sense, let's do it. But I would anticipate that they would expect to pay less when you don't have as much consulting experience to do that full time. So for example, if you have a job and people know that, they're not going to pay you a $100,000 consulting fee. Now, this next question is fun. Should I tell my employer? I think it's none of their business. You know your industry. There's things that you might have signed some non-disclosures or things that are proprietary. And I fully support you being loyal to that company. They're paying you. They're giving you that security. They're giving you that consistency. And you really need to honor that. But as far as what you're doing in your own time, and if you're building something on the side and doing consulting, I don't think there's a reason to tell your employer. Now, you're obviously not going to share confidential information. You're not going to use trade secrets. When you quit your job, like, what's their policy? Do they ask you to give 2-week notice? Honor things like that. Be respectful to your employer, but what you do on your own time is your own business. Does my employment agreement allow consulting on the side? Well, I have no idea. You can look at whatever agreement that you signed in your business. It's kind of interesting. Like, maybe it's a unique space. Maybe you're doing consulting within that firm, and so they might have specific rules about you doing consulting outside, like on your own. Find out what's written in your agreement. How do I avoid conflicts of interest? Well, find out what is defined as a conflict of interest in your agreement, but also just think about it ethically. If what you're doing on the side is actually becoming a competitor and hurting the company that you work for, that is not okay. Like, you can't take leads that they found through their marketing efforts and you service them on the side. I would say that's illegal. That's worth being fired, but that's also worth being sued. Can I consult in the same industry? I don't have any problem with that. I mean, that's what probably makes the most sense. If you're working in this industry, you have experience, and so yeah, you want to be ethical about it. You don't want to breach any contracts, and you don't want to do anything that's going to hurt the company that's paying you. But in the same industry, you can start consulting there. I mean, that's what I did in the web design space. They were doing advertising and getting leads, and those leads, I would sell the internet marketing and web design services to them. But in the same industry, I advertised in my local classifieds, and I found a couple of businesses that hired me to design their websites. So same industry, but I did not poach leads from the company that I worked for. So what about this question? Can I use company knowledge or resources? I mean, if there's anything that's proprietary or things that you trained that are kind of confidential knowledge, that's unfair for you to use that on your own and become a competitor to the people who hired you. If there's certain methods or systems or tools that are unique to that company, I say that you should respect that. But overall, like in the marketing world, as you're learning general marketing tactics and they're sharing you resources that are general and you're just gaining industry knowledge and things like that, well, that's something that once you quit, that now belongs to you and you can continue to apply that knowledge. Should I charge from day one? That's a good question. Like, what are you charging them for? Do you know how to actually help them get a result? Or are you just hopeful that you can? You don't want to charge when you're still learning, when you're still doing experiments, right? Especially a high fee. You can start out free or you can start out at a very low price, but that'll change really, really quickly. So if somebody is right here, let's say they don't have a website, and now they have a website that they're very happy with, now you have a track record of success, and you can charge people for that end result. Yeah, this is what I'll deliver. So that was a visual example, and I know with consulting, you still need to do the same thing. You still need to say, well, this is where you were, this is what you're struggling with, and this is where you are now. And there's a transformation there. And when you have a track record of being able to deliver that outcome, then that's when you charge for it. How many clients should I take before quitting? Well, that's a good question. It depends on how much time each client takes. But if you're working 40 hours a week here, how much time does it take you over here? If you've got 3 clients, and that's taking an additional 20 hours a week, I don't think you can take much more than that. But that should be generating a consistent amount of revenue to where if you quit and freed up 40 hours of your time, now you've got room for more consulting clients. What should I work on after work, right? So after your 40 hours, where should you be spending your time? I wouldn't worry so much about all of the personal branding, like your logo, your website, your style guide, your headshots and stuff like that. And don't spend time on all these systems and CRMs and funnels and all that. Your time should be spent on the phone. Reach out to people, ask for referrals, start working in the trenches and providing the actual consulting. You're going to be working a lot more in your business, not on your business in this phase. When you're working in the business, you know that every minute you spend, you're bringing in revenue. Now, I'm sure there's going to be exceptions to this, but you really shouldn't spend a lot of time or money working on your business at that point. And the exceptions would be, is it going to help you transition more? And the answer is going to be yes, but just be really careful with that, because you can actually spend so much time working on your business that you're not making any revenue. Like, you need to get to a point where you've got this is your stable income. Any income here, you're going to be tempted to reinvest, which do some, but you want to start building savings. Build savings, and if you have revenue that's building savings over here, and then when you quit, you'll have revenue coming in, you'll have savings that you can draw from if you need, but you'll have a lot more time that you can dedicate over here, so ideally you won't have to draw from your savings. How many hours per week does this realistically take? it really is going to depend from industry to industry. If you're just providing consulting for a couple of hours per week per client, like how many clients can you help? From my own experience, like a full-time effort in a business is what it really takes to grow it. Now, does that mean it has to be 40 hours? I don't think so, especially if you've got this other 40-hour-a-week job. But what is realistic? What can you do without burning out? And what can you stay consistent with for a while to get you to the point where you can quit your job? What's the highest leverage activity? That is easy. That's being on the phone or Zoom, actually talking with potential clients. Should I reinvest my consulting income? I would say yes and no. I would say it's more important in the early days to actually save. Once you transition, you do want to have a portion of your income that's reinvesting. That's when you're going to start working more and more on your business. See, there's a spectrum. There's self-employed and there's business owner. Somebody who's self-employed, think of a dentist that doesn't even have a receptionist or dental hygienist, somebody that cleans the teeth. But you have a patient that comes in and you do everything. You're working in your business, you're self-employed. Versus a business owner, and the same example would be you own the practice, but you hire another dentist and you can go on vacation while the dentist and the receptionist and the dental hygienist run the business, right? So as you transition in your consulting business, you get ready. You've got your job and you're going to start in your consulting business fully self-employed. And as you build up that revenue and get more and more income coming in self-employed, so much so that you can quit your job, now you've got a lot more time and you can allocate a lot of that time to working on your business. So you can increase the time working in it and increase your revenues, and you can start working on your business to make it more and more efficient. How much savings should I have before leaving my job? Well, that's up to you. I would say 6 months of income would be great, maybe 3 months. It just depends on you and what your risk tolerances are and how much momentum you have, how much consistency you have. But yeah, I like the idea of having savings. Last question, should I replace 100% of my salary before quitting? That would be really cool, and I think that's pretty rare. To fully make 100% of your income, I mean, if it's a small income, that's going to be easier. But if you've got a decent paying job, if you've got a 6-figure job, but you expect a part-time consulting gig to replace that, I think that's going to be a far stretch. So I would say if you've got a 6-figure revenue stream, take some of that and put it into savings. Start putting your extra money from consulting into savings. Build up a consistent revenue to where you say, hey, if I reallocated a lot of this time into my own personal consulting, that should replace it. That would give you more confidence of quitting your job. So as you get more and more clarity like this on building your consulting business while keeping your full-time job, the next question you probably want answered is, what if you don't have any consulting experience yet? Well, that's what I cover in this episode. How do I start a consulting business with no experience? You'll learn how to build credibility, how to gain experience that clients are actually looking for, and how to position yourself for a long-term success, even before you've had your first paying consulting client. So I'll link to that episode right there. I'll see you there.